The topic of today's talk is influences on God images of older adults, or what is it that influences the formation of God images of older adults. Increased longevity has resulted in a rapidly growing cohort of older persons. Through informal conversation, there is indication that there is a continuation in spiritual growth of older persons, which is evidenced by their evolving God images. These are images that change throughout the life of a person. There may be modifications, they may be completely changed images, or there could be images also which do not change. Through anecdotal reports, older men and women describe the development of their God images that are beyond objectification, using terms such as the cosmos, complexification, power, knowledge, essence, and presence. Their images had changed, had become simpler. They evolved from what was taught in catechism and through rituals to simpler forms of communication with God, which they personalized and made their own. The God images that are present throughout the lifespan of a person have an impact on the spirituality and the religiosity of that person. It is important to understand how, therefore, the spirituality and the religiosity of that person can be utilized by the clinician, counselor, psychologist, or spiritual director, who should therefore look for ways that the God images of their client, directee, or therapy, person who comes for therapy, can be used at the stage of older adulthood. Since God images may be an important mediator of health, spiritual and religious beliefs help some people to cope in ways that increase positive outcomes. And therefore, having influences that increase these positive outcomes over time strengthens a person's spiritual relationship with God. Also, religion and spirituality can affect a person's response to stressors, depending on that person's attitudes, motivations, and behaviors, especially for those for whom religion forms an important aspect of their understanding of self and the world. So some of the various influences that could impact an older person's God image are parenting styles. Parenting styles in early childhood and their influence. Counselors, therapists, psychotherapists, spiritual directors should explore the parenting styles of clients and see how those relate to the client's relationship with God in the present. Also, the role of other caregivers like professors, holy people, books, literature. Yes, books and literature are also strong influences in early childhood, and they are carried right up to older adulthood. The role of these influences and their relationship to the client and how the client interacts with those images can be explored. The positive influences in early childhood could be explored. We tend to put more emphasis on negative influences, but the positive influences help in transformation, and movement from a negative influence to a positive or a healthier one could be an indication of progress. Early childhood God images may or may not have any relation to those that appear later on in life. But if a person moves beyond a negative influence which is present in early childhood to something that is positive later on, it could indicate a development in the spiritual process, in the spiritual growth of the person, and how that happened could be explored. How and why the changed images emerged, evolved, and influenced the client, the therapy, the person in therapy could be explored. This exploration of the client's inner lives could be done through journaling, bibliotherapy, especially stressing the effect of caregivers, books, persons, and the God of their understanding on the development of their God images throughout their lifespans. Cognitive restructuring could also be explored. These might increase insight and promote the processing of negative or positive experiences, recent or past. It could help in understanding the relationship with God by looking for newer emerging God images, even in older adulthood, and the relationship of the new and emerging images to the early images and influences. Education is a strong influence in the formation of God images. And during the various stages of education, there are books, scriptural texts, and persons who might have impacted clients. Their religious and spiritual beliefs could have changed because of these influences, because education is a factor in changing images. Therefore, knowing people's religious and spiritual beliefs helps in working with them, and also the education helps in working with them. How much they have connected to the various scriptural texts, books, and persons could be used as aids in making them get a deeper understanding of themselves. Classical, philosophical, and theological texts can be used to create an integrative understanding of the self, the world, and others. Their impact in ministerial, psychological, and educational formation of clergy and religious, when relevant, could be explored and understood. It is also important to explore anything that has changed or that has got modified, because the causes and the consequences of the changed or modified God image is important. It could show permanency, it could show constancy, or it could show change. And when explored, it might show whether it is beneficial or whether it is not beneficial. It has to be explored, they have to be explored from the viewpoint of how they impacted the person. Therefore, newer attachments which are made with persons, books, scripture, the God of their understanding, could be understood, and their influence could be looked at in the present. Thus, we see that influences have a strong relationship to coping and meaning making in persons. Some of the complex concerns of older adults are poor health, feelings of isolation, loss of social relationships, and the end of life issues, which often entail a spiritual component. These symbolic relationships could be understood by bringing in what influenced their understandings of God in relation to their concern. New evolving images with regard to caregivers, scripture, can be understood in light of the old ones, and their relationship to spiritual or religious coping skills can be understood and utilized. The modifications and changes in God or understandings of God through actions, influential persons, objects, and non-objects like cosmos, quantification, presence, felt presence, could be explored in relationship to coping and meaning making. These individual and communitarian influences with regard to self and others could infuse purpose and meaning into life by fostering and strengthening the older adult's spiritual well-being for a more productive and fruitful life journey. Changes or changed, evolving or evolved images with regard to caregivers, books, scripture, and the God of their understanding could be discussed and incorporated as treatments and techniques for older adults. They could be used to help older persons find solid ground to stand upon while everything is changing around them. In conclusion, we could say that older adulthood and older adults hold spirituality and religiosity as important aspects of their lives. With a growing population of older adults, the influences on how they communicate with God is important. They could be persons, books, scripture, or any other object representation or non-object representation. And their effective use in clinical work could be good ways to reach older adults to holistic growth.